ProjectAD.me.com has some of the best supplements around. You guys know that I've supported Project AD from the beginning. They've supported Beast Fitness Radio from the beginning. Joe Binley over there has a whole team of just amazing guys. If you go to their website, you can actually check out and see their entire health line, which includes a fiber product, an actual greens and reds product, a heart and liver and kidney-based products. We have an actual one of the best glucose disposal agents on the market, if not the best. We have Aminotor, which is essentially essentially a branched-chain amino acid product. We have Nitrox, which is more of a pump-based formula. We have Raging Full, which is going to be your intra-workout carbohydrates, but also could be used in a peri-workout setting. There is things for digestion, there's things for energy, there's things for fat loss. Overall, Project AD has everything you need. Use coupon code BFR25 at checkout to save you guys some money and obviously to support this podcast and support Joe Binley. Mike Arnold has been nice enough to come on Beast Fitness Radio weekly, do Q&As, do topic videos, and so because of that, and because he actually does help sponsor this podcast as well, we want to show him some support. Check out maresearchchems.com, coupon code ALEX15, and masupps.com for code ALEX20. Over at MA Research Chems, those are all HPLC tested peptides, SARMs, all that kind of good stuff. And over at masupps.com, he has more of his specialty-based supplements. Guys, please go support him. You're supporting the show, you're supporting me, you're supporting Mike Arnold. All good guys. Thank you so much. Enjoy the episode.
Disclaimer, I wanted to say right up front that all MA research compounds are for research use only. In vitro use research is the only legal acceptable application. So anything we're going to talk about from this point forward is strictly done for entertainment purposes. There are no recommendations or guidelines given outside the realm of entertainment.
What's up, everyone? Online Prep Coach Alex here with theprepcoach.com, back with another episode of Beast Fitness Radio. And before we go ahead and talk about nootropics today, and I kind of want to focus on alpha GPC, I need to get you guys caught up on some stuff. So this Saturday, my lovely baby girl is set to be born. May come a little bit earlier, may come later, who knows? But we are set to go in on Saturday to the hospital and get that little baby girl out of my wife's stomach. So I am so excited. Lindsay is so excited. We can't wait to actually meet Lila. And it's just, it's really just a massive life-changing event. We were kind of reminiscing earlier, actually this morning we were talking about it. And we talked about when we first moved in together, and literally when we moved in together in our apartment complex, it's actually not too far from where we're living now. We both moved in, we had a combined total of a couple $100 in our bank account. It was one of those things where we were both in college, we were both working 40 hours a week, and we were worried about finances, worried about this, worried about that. No matter what, I always told her, you know, things are going to work out. Things just always have their way of working out for good people, and they do good things, and if they're willing to work hard. And that's really what happened, because then from there, we got a bigger apartment. We moved places so that Lindsay could actually work her job after she graduated. We bought a puppy, so that was Molly at that point. Then we bought a house. Then we bought Piper, which is our other little puppy dog. And so now we have this house. We have two puppies, and now we're bringing a little girl into our lives. And it's just, it's so crazy to think back about 7 years ago when we first started dating, that this is where we've gotten in 7 years. It really blows my mind. And obviously that kind of goes without saying, if you are a client of mine or if anyone's reaching out to me this weekend, I will not be responding to emails. I'm going to be focusing on my family, my little baby girl, and taking that time just for us. If you are in prep, or if you are a couple, or if you're a week out or anything like that, obviously I've reached out to you already. But for the vast majority of people that are in their off season or even a couple weeks out during prep, you know, I'll be getting to those emails that we need to. But if not, you'll get a response on Monday. As long as it's not time-sensitive material, then I will be responding. Or if it is time-sensitive material, I will be responding. If it's not, you will probably get an email on Monday. So I do apologize in advance for that. But this is, you know, something that happens once, twice, maybe 3 times in your life. And I really want to enjoy that time with my family. So really excited, really pumped up about that. Because of that, we have doctor's visits, which I shouldn't have planned to do any recording this week. Originally, I had planned to talk with a couple people, get a couple people on this podcast. Even Mike Arnold, he's actually away on vacation. And he's getting back, I believe, on Friday or so. And I originally made all these plans with people, and then the week kind of got away from me, and then I realized, oh, I have our last baby appointment, oh, I have this, oh, I have that, and so this is probably the only podcast you guys are going to get out this week, probably the only one you're going to hear, and then next week's going to resume like normal, but I still wanted to make sure I got this, guys, this podcast out to you, because I feel bad. Not only that, but I like educating. It really is fun, and it kind of goes perfectly with one of my clients. I actually just posted her up on Instagram. She's down 20 pounds. Her name is Valerie. She is just such an awesome, positive person. We're actually in prep, but not really counting weeks. We're down 20 pounds. She's looking phenomenal. Before, she was doing a ton of stimulants. She was tons of cardio, low calories. And now this time around, there's no end date. We are slowly systemically bringing down her body fat levels. And one of the things that she noticed is that she needs a little more cognitive boost during the day. And I can't actually find the email in front of me right now, but essentially what she was looking for was for me to talk about nootropics. And it's easier for me to record these podcasts for my clients because other people can learn from them. And it's kind of a little more personal for the actual client. Well, actually all my clients are friends. But it's just easier. Not only that, but it would take me pages and pages to write up what I'm trying to say. And so it's usually easier for me to just go off on one of my rants and talk about this kind of stuff. So because of that, we are talking all about nootropics with a main emphasis on alpha GPC, because I feel like that is one of my preferred actual nootropics on the market. It has a lot of applications a lot of people are unaware of. And I want to take a step back and I want to talk about from the very base bones, what are nootropics? Essentially, and if you look up the actual definition, nootropic is just a drug classification of, it's actually a classification of drugs, supplements, and other substances to actually improve cognitive functioning. Generally, we're looking at functions, we're looking at memory, we're looking at creativity, we're looking at motivation, we're looking at every different aspect of the brain, and we're trying to enhance its effects. Because of that, things like caffeine, things that are any stimulatory base can technically be classified as nootropics. There's a whole really long list, but I wanted to start off with choline. So whenever we're looking at choline, first of all, we need to understand that choline is a nutrient that we all require for our health. Our body can make some of it, but generally you're going to need to get choline from your diet to not get deficient. Whenever you look at what it does, first of all, from a signaling aspect, it actually builds molecules that acts as cell messengers. If you look at from a DNA production aspect, along with things like vitamin B12, folate, all those other things, they're actually helping to produce DNA. Now, here's the part, the brain and the nerve side of things, it actually builds acetylcholine, which is that neurotransmitter that's essential for cognitive functioning, cognitive improvement, tons of other things from a neurological side of things. We look at the overall cellular health side of things, and we see that those, at least from a phospholipid standpoint, it actually builds phospholipids that give structure to our cell membranes. And then we look at things even from a organ health standpoint. So if you look at some of the literature done on choline and homocysteine, it actually helps remove homocysteine, which actually raises the risk of heart disease. So if you're removing something that's raising the risk of heart disease, then you can essentially reduce the risk of heart disease. And I've talked about homocysteine in the past. If I need to make a new video on that, I definitely will. But for our purposes, choline is a nutrient that is essential. A lot of people don't consider it essential. I feel like it is. If you look at the actual we'll say required numbers out there, and I don't necessarily agree with these, but these are from the National Institute for Health. If you are looking at an adult male, you're looking at about 600 milligrams per day being an optimal and recommended intake. If you're looking at an adult female, you're looking at about 450 milligrams per day. And then from there, if you are obviously pregnant or nursing or a younger, obviously, I don't want to say young adult, but if you're in your teen years, those numbers differ very dramatically, but anywhere from about 400 to 600 milligrams of dietary choline intake per day, or getting that total choline number per day, is going to be extremely beneficial. Now, again, we already talked about some of the main things that it does. One of the reasons and one of the issues with having these low levels of choline in your body is, first of all the different cognitive dysfunctions you can have, some of the organ dysfunctions you can have. So generally looking at fatty liver, issues like that. And the big thing that affects athletes is fatigue. So we have muscle fatigue. We have endurance. Actually, if you look in the studies, you'll get endurance levels dropping dramatically. There was one study, and this was the very popular one, where they took eggs, and forgive me if I'm not 100% accurate on this, but they basically made the the athletes taking about, I think it was 400 to 500 milligrams of choline in per day from whole eggs. And what they ended up seeing was the group that actually hit those numbers from whole egg sources, I believe calories were actually equated, that they started to lose body fat. They started to gain muscle tissue. They reported that cognitive functioning was better than it's ever been in their entire lives. And the list just went on and on. Not only that, but if you look at parasympathetic activity, there's obviously a lot of cool links there with choline supplementation with proper choline levels. If you look at mitochondrial health and low energy levels, again, all of these things are interplaying with making sure that you're getting the right amounts of dietary choline in your diet. Now, as bodybuilders, as physique and performance-based athletes, you're going to be most likely getting enough choline from eggs, chicken, your whole grains, things like that. Unless if you're actually eating organ meats, which I cannot stand the flavor. Some people actually love like liver and stuff like that. I'm one of those people that don't. You can get in a lot of your choline literally just from whole eggs or chicken and all those kind of stuff. Now, we talked about choline. I want to get a little bit into some of the literature before we actually move on. So first of all, from the neurological side of things, there was one study, it actually, I believe it was a meta-analysis of over 1,500 people, and the big correlation that they drew was higher intake choline levels basically correlated directly with increased cognitive performance. So we're talking about things from verbal skills, memory acquisition, visual memory, and this all kind of played into the fact that choline builds that protective myelin sheath around neurons and restores levels of acetylcholine. And it kind of fights off us actually getting those mental disorders and getting some of those cognitive disease issues. So things like Alzheimer's, things that are affected from the neurological level that we can pretty much keep going on and on about. There is some good literature that kind of points to the theories of, okay, maybe this is purely a choline deficiency, which over the course of time has resulted in these poor neurological declines. I can't really hang my hat on that, but whenever you start seeing the fact that proper choline supplementation literally does boost your brain health, literally does protect your brain, again, working from a neuron and a neurological side of things, it makes sense. So that may be one of the reasons why you might not, I mean, I don't want to say, obviously no one wants to have a stroke or have Alzheimer's, or even with bipolar diseases, again, choline seems to be pretty well interconnected and interplayed with everything from a neurological side of things. We do know that in the liver, again, choline builds that phosphatidylcholine, so it helps break down fats in the liver. So again, low levels of choline generally lead to fatty liver. It actually lowered the risk of non-alcoholic fatty liver. There was one study, this was an observational trial over in China. It had 56,000 or 57,000 people. It was somewhere almost close to 60K people. And everyone that had a higher choline intake didn't have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which was, that's a lot of people, almost 60,000 people in an observational trial. Obviously, this wasn't the best conducted study, but when we start putting things together and seeing that it's enhancing cholesterol metabolism, it's blocking oxidative damage, stopping actual liver scarring, preventing cell mutation, liver cancer, the list goes on and on, you start to kind of lean towards, okay, having adequate levels of choline is probably going to be very beneficial. I haven't seen a choline level that was detrimental. That could be just me missing some of the literature, but obviously low levels of choline are not going to be a good thing. I did mention, and this goes back to some of the, we'll say some of the fetal development literature that I started getting into whenever my wife first became pregnant, just how essential choline is during this fetal development period. And believe it or not, a lot of females, at least the ones that I've been in contact with, and especially my wife, their body starts to crave certain food sources based on what they need. So my wife all of a sudden started really getting a craving for eggs. And then obviously you have periods whenever you, due to morning sickness, due to other issues, you can't eat those foods. But the whole pregnancy, she's had a massive craving for eggs. I've had a couple other female clients of mine where we put some pregnancy protocols together. They got pregnant and they were all craving eggs. Other people were craving just meats. So that could point to maybe a choline deficiency on the egg side of things. That could point to an iron deficiency on the meat side of things. There's all these different deficiencies that could be in place. I just thought it was very, very interesting. Not to mention, again, whenever you look at a lot of the fetal development studies, how important choline is for proper brain structure and functioning. how important it is to actually prevent birth defects and mental illness. So I encouraged my wife to continue eating as many eggs as she wanted. There was one, again, this was another observational study. This was done with about 1,000 mothers where they were actually pregnant, and they actually increased choline intake in their actual second trimester. And what they found was whenever these children were born, the people that actually did this seemed to have, at least those children, seemed to have improved memory functioning as a whole. I think it was mainly looking at visual memory, but I could be wrong on that. So either way, you get it. You understand that choline is very beneficial. So why are we even talking about choline? We're talking about choline because that's what's going to lead us into alpha GPC. Alpha GPC is L-alpha glycerol phosphocholene, or choline alpha-ceretate. I believe that's how it's pronounced. And it's basically just, again, a phospholipid essential for brain health. So it does provide choline to cell membranes and myelin production, and it almost acts to, I don't want to say feed the nervous system, but almost replenishes and nourishes the nervous system. So choline from alpha GPC also builds acetylcholine. So again, that's the neurotransmitter we talked about before that basically maintains your cognitive functioning, your muscle functioning, and again, you can see why we started off with choline since we're moving into alpha GPC, because choline itself is the very important nootropic base of what we're talking about. So a lot of people, when they're looking at nootropic supplementation, they're looking at CDP choline versus alpha GPC, and they're usually comparing the two. So from a basic standpoint, first of all, let's look at it. We have CDP choline that's made of choline with 2 phosphate groups, and then we have alpha GPC, which is made of choline with 1 phosphate group and a glycerol. Sounds very, very familiar, very, very similar, but for you guys that have listened to this podcast multiple times, you'll know that one additional or one less phosphate group or one additional compound or one additional anything can completely change the characteristics of these supplements or drugs. So when we look at actually raising choline blood levels, because that's what's going to be giving us the majority of our mental and neurological benefits. Alpha GPC raises choline blood levels much better than CDP choline does. Actually, a pretty dramatic amount. Not only that, but whenever you look at some of the, we'll say lipolytic-based studies, so more of the ability to utilize fat loss or actually utilize body fat to increase growth hormone production, to do all these things, alpha GPC stands far ahead of CDP choline. Now, the one cool thing about CDP choline is, well, obviously we do know that it is essential for the production of phosphatidylcholine, which it has more of a broader range of active metabolites. So CDP choline has its place, but for at least for the purposes of our circumstances, it's not what we want to use if we're trying to find the optimal nootropic, or at least the better working nootropic. So alpha GPC, let's kind of take it back just to that, because that's the nootropic I wanted to focus on now that we have the basics understood. Alpha GPC really does support the whole nervous system once again by boosting acetylcholine and increasing that cholinergic activity. It actually does raise other levels in the brain, so other protective messengers like serotonin, N-acetylphosphate, dopamine, GABA. That's actually one of the mechanisms that interplays with growth hormone. But you can see from a cognitive, from a nootropic side of things, if we are able to boost levels of choline to a much greater degree in the blood, then obviously you're going to get more of the neurological and more of the cognitive benefits. So once again, alpha GPC reigns supreme over CDP choline. If you actually look at the dopaminergic, serotogenic, cholinergic, glutaminergic, there's so many different mechanisms from a neurological side of things that alpha GPC works on. It's really, really interesting. A lot of these studies were done in rodents. We don't have a lot of human trials on alpha GPC, but whenever you actually look at what it does and you actually utilize it in humans, like one of the studies, they actually looked at injections of alpha GPC, and they looked at how it increased greater neuronal accumulation of N-acetylphosphate. When you actually apply this to humans, when you apply this to actual physique, performance-based athletes, you find that it really does work. Now, even though this is all done in rats, they're finding that it actually potentiates the potassium and both calcium release in the hippocampus and receptor-mediated production of that N-acetylphosphate, which is similar whenever we were looking at some of the other things which we think actually support phospholipids. But when you go down all the different neurotransmissional we'll say, mechanisms and pathways of how alpha GPC works, and you apply it to daily users, especially from a memory and cognition side of things, especially from a attention side of things, the one thing that a lot of people miss out on is some of the neurological benefits whenever they're actually looking at physical performance. So this specifically was, there was one study done, and it basically showed that alpha GPC can enhance power output. So it was something like, I believe they were doing bench throws, and it was about a 15 or 20% power output improvement compared to the placebo. And this is when taken about 45 minutes prior to activity. Now, if you do look at how alpha GPC works from a pharmacokinetic standpoint, you're generally going to see it in the bloodstream for a full 24 hours, but it's generally going to give its peak efficacy in about an hour to 3 hours. Somewhere in that range is generally when alpha GPC is working the best. So we see that. We understand, okay, when it peaks in the bloodstream, we understand that it may have some potentials for a potential power output. We see that from a fat mass side of things and what it does from a lipolytic side of things. And this is the one thing that I talked about before. There is some potentials for it to increase plasma biomarkers of lipolysis. I obviously don't hang my hat on that. I wouldn't take alpha GPC for its ability to boost growth hormone. I would not take alpha GPC for its ability to potentially increase fat loss, but I would take alpha GPC to fuel performance in the gym, or to fuel education and performance and focus and attention and overall cognitive functioning outside of the gym. That's a big thing. The original, or my client that asked this question, the original question was more about using this during the day while she's working. So if you're looking at it from purely increasing attention, alpha GPC is going to be absolutely amazing. You can combine that with a little bit of caffeine. There seems to be some of a synergistic effect going on there, and I say that with a grain of salt because obviously caffeine is going to do its thing no matter what. Pairing that with alpha GPC, obviously with a little bit of stimulation, is going to help just from a basic understanding standpoint. But no matter what, even if you take alpha GPC by itself from an attention standpoint, from the overall cognitive standpoint, it really does seem to work really, really well. Now, if you look at free choline and acetylcholine, it's actually found in pretty low levels in neural tissue. That's why concentrations of stored forms of choline, so phosphocholine and alpha GPC, are relatively higher. So if we are actually supplementing with alpha GPC, we can increase the actual concentration of choline and free choline in that actual neurological tissue. So we have all of that. Now, I feel like without getting into absorption rates and all that kind of stuff that you guys probably don't care about, we already talked about alpha GPC being probably one of the better known compounds to increase choline levels, increasing plasma and brain choline levels. And remember, that does that mainly because of the transportation into the brains or through the blood-brain barrier and all that kind of good stuff. I feel like you guys probably want to know, how do I use this? Look at a lot of the literature. Look at a lot of the recommended dosage out there, and the standard dosage is anywhere from 250 to 650 milligrams. I have seen literature that went all the way upwards of a couple grams. I have seen literature that has been as low as, I want to say, 50 grams. Remember, alpha GPC is about, I think it's like 40% choline by weight. So if you have 1,000 milligrams of alpha GPC, you're really getting 400 milligrams of dietary choline. Now, to get that amount of dietary choline from eggs is going to be a lot. It's not going to be a more concentrated form in neurological tissue. So even though you can meet your choline requirements for the day, if you're looking to use this supplement purely from a neurological aspect, the actual oral bioavailability of alpha GPC and of these different cholinergic neurological supplements, it's actually very well absorbed and very well utilized. It can go through the blood-brain barrier, and that can actually store in neurological tissue a lot easier than the process it has to go through from actually pulling the choline out of whole food sources. So there's the rough dosage range. If you looked at the studies that looked at enhancing power output, which was only a handful of studies, they were right around the 500 to 600 milligram range. The higher dose studies were looking mainly at growth hormone secretion, which, again, if you are a natural-based athlete and your growth hormone levels and your IGF levels are already healthy, you're not really going to be getting much of a benefit unless if you're taking exogenous growth hormone or growth hormone peptides. So in general, trying to maximize growth hormone, trying to maximize even testosterone for a natural-based athlete isn't going to be doing much unless if you are at a testosterone deficiency or a growth hormone deficiency. So now fast forward, look at some of the actual studies that actually looked at preventing cognitive decline. This was looked at a higher dosage divided up throughout the day. So we're looking at anywhere from 200 to 400 milligrams taken morning, noon, and night. And that's generally how I like to prescribe it based on my clients. Now, we can take a step even further into that, and you can look at some of the actual milligram per kilogram studies that they used. And remember, this was in rat studies. And it basically looked like something like about 48, anywhere from I think it was 50 to 100 milligrams per kilogram based on body weight. So if you are 150 pounds, you're looking at anywhere from 3 to 6 grams of alpha GPC per day. To me, that's really on the high end of things, even though that is looking at oral ingestion and looking at how it peaks in your bloodstream, and that's more for the growth hormone side of things and some of the hormonal side of things. I really feel like 200 to 400 milligrams split 3 times throughout the day is the best in the situation that my client described, which is trying to increase cognitive functioning throughout the day. It's one thing that I do whenever I have a ton of work to get done. It's something that a lot of people kind of avoid for fear of interfering with brain activity. Which, if you understand choline, if you understand alpha GPC, you're not going to be running into issues like some of these other, I don't even want to call them nootropics, but some of these other, products that are classified as nootropics, which are smart drugs that have some dependency and some actual issues that can build up over time. But again, I won't get into that for today. So from an alpha GPC standpoint, to answer the original question, 200 to 400 milligrams split morning, noon, and night. If you are using it pre-workout to enhance power output, you're looking at about 600, we'll say 500 milligrams to a gram. If you were trying to do it based on the studies, you are going to be looking at, how many people are 150 pounds? And for that, they had people taking in 6 grams. That's a lot of alpha GPC per day. Again, I don't know if I've seen any overdosing studies. I don't believe there's anything like that. But to me, I've never had anyone take in 6 grams of daily alpha GPC. And that's regardless of what the actual literature says. So I would err on the side of caution. And at the most, I would probably stick to around 50 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And again, that's at the high end of things. You can get away with a lot less, especially if it's a good alpha GPC product. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that little introduction about nootropics, choline, alpha GPC as a whole. I have a ton of literature that I hope I can put in this podcast if I can remember to actually where I have it on my desktop on my computer. But otherwise, as always, thank you so much guys for listening. Check out theprepcoach.com. Oh, and before I forget, Project AD is giving away a free tub of Matador to everyone that actually does a testimonial. So shoot me an email at alex@theprepcoach.com, and if it is a written testimonial with pictures, then you can actually get a free tub of Matador. If you actually do a video one, which we're trying to collect more of those because Project AD is about to go through some big changes over the next 7 days. If you can actually get us a video, then you can get a free tub of Matador and a free tub of actual Professor Nuts peanut butter. So please email me that, guys. If you like Matador, if you don't like it, even let me know. Shoot me an email. So far, I've had maybe 2 or 3 people ever that did not like Matador, didn't respond well, and then you have biological differences, but that's out of thousands and thousands of people, so those are pretty good odds and rates. But as always, check out theprepcoach.com. I'll see you guys next time. I am done ranting, done talking. I'm thirsty as hell.